Good morning, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. It's Thursday, August 7th, 2025, and this is your AM update.
Thankfully, all are in stable condition and all are expected to recover. The alleged shooter is in custody.
5 injured as an active duty soldier opens fire on his fellow service members on a Georgia Army base. President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin set to potentially meet face to face as soon as next week.
The number one purchase by SNAP recipients is sugary drinks.
Top Trump officials work with state governments to end taxpayer-funded subsidies of soda, candy, and junk food. And one of the nation's largest windmill projects canceled by the Trump administration. Locals rejoice. All that and more coming up in just a moment on your AM update. You know the feeling, someone in your family gets sick, and then you're stuck waiting for a doctor's appointment, or the pharmacy's out of stock, or you're left wondering why something so basic must be so hard. Too many American families face this reality, and that's why many are turning to All Family Pharmacy. They're doing what Big Pharma won't, which is putting families back in control and making it possible to be proactive, not reactive, with your health. This is not just some online pharmacy. All Family Pharmacy is based in Florida and family owned. You can order ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, daily maintenance meds, emergency kits, everything you'd want to have on hand before you need it. Order online and they will work with licensed doctors to provide the prescription for you. Then your medications get shipped right to your door. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Megyn, okay? allfamilypharmacy.com/Megyn. Use the code Megyn10 to get 10% off today. Again, go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Megyn. Remember to use my code Megyn10 to get 10% off today. Be prepared, be in control. This is healthcare that works for you. An active duty soldier opening fire Wednesday morning at Fort Stewart in Georgia, injuring 5 fellow service members. Soldiers in the area quickly reacting, working together to tackle the shooter, allowing law enforcement to take him into custody. Fort Stewart Senior Commander, Army Brigadier General John Lubis, Wednesday afternoon briefing reporters on the victims.
This morning, shortly before 11 o'clock, an active duty soldier assigned to Fort Stewart, Georgia, shot and wounded 5 of his fellow soldiers here on Fort Stewart. Thankfully, all are in stable condition and all are expected to recover. The alleged shooter is in custody. We have reestablished security. I have lifted all lockdown measures on Fort Stewart, and there is currently no threat to the local community. I would also like to thank the brave soldiers who immediately intervened and subdued the shooter. These soldiers, without a doubt, prevented further casualties. Our wounded soldiers were initially evacuated to Wynn Army Community Hospital right here on Fort Stewart. All arrived in stable condition, and 3 of the 5 required surgical intervention. 2 have been transported to Memorial Hospital in Savannah, Georgia for additional care.
The soldiers' identities not yet released. Authorities now working to identify the motive. General Lubis with more on the alleged perpetrator.
We have identified the alleged shooter as an automated logistics sergeant assigned to 2nd Brigade Combat Team. Sergeant has not previously deployed to combat. Has been interviewed by the Army Criminal Investigation Division and is currently in pretrial confinement awaiting a charging decision by the Office of the Special Trial Counsel. And what we know is this soldier, the shooting occurred at the soldier's place of work. It did involve his co-workers. We're still not certain about the motivations, but again, he's been interviewed by Army investigators, and we believe we'll gain more information here shortly.
The attack allegedly carried out with a personal handgun, not a service weapon. Investigators exploring how the 28-year-old suspect brought a weapon on base. President Trump Wednesday afternoon from the Oval promising swift justice.
The Army Criminal Investigation Division is on site to ensure that the perpetrator of this atrocity, which is exactly what it is, will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The entire nation is praying for the victims and their families, and hopefully they'll fully recover, and we can put this chapter behind, but we're not going to forget what happened.
President Trump reportedly planning to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin as early as next week, followed by a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The announcement coming hours after a meeting between Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Putin. After multiple previous rounds of failed talks, President Trump publicly casting doubt on Mr. Putin's sincerity when it comes to reaching a ceasefire deal with Ukraine. Ultimately, President Trump imposing a Friday deadline on the Kremlin, either agree to a ceasefire or face secondary sanctions, a 100% tariff on any nation purchasing Russian oil. Secretary of State Marco Rubio telling Fox Business the decision on implementing secondary sanctions will come within 24 to 36 hours. President Trump from the Oval on the latest developments.
What was the breakthrough today? Did Vladimir Putin make some kind of concession that he hasn't been willing to make before?
I don't call it a breakthrough. I mean, we've been working on this a long time. I feel I have an obligation to get it stopped. This was not my war. This war would have never started, not even a chance. And it didn't start for 4 years. But this is Biden's war. This was on his watch. I'm here to get the thing over with. It would have never started if I were president. And we're here to get it stopped and get the death stopped.
President Zelensky reacting to the announcement with cautious optimism. Quote, "The pressure on Russia is working, but the main thing is that they do not deceive us in the details, neither us nor the U.S." President Trump on the prospect of a summit between the embattled leaders.
Have Putin and Zelensky agreed to a summit yet? And where and when would that be?
Well, there's a very good prospect that they will. And we haven't determined where, but we had some very good talks with President Putin today. And there's a very good chance that we could be ending the round, ending the end of that road. That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
Coming up, 6 more states move to ban soda, junk food, and candy from SNAP or welfare benefits. And President Trump squashes plans for a massive Idaho wind farm hastily approved in the final weeks of the Biden administration. I've been talking a lot about Riverbend Ranch steaks lately, and for good reason. The ranch is just a few miles from West Yellowstone, Montana, where we go in the wintertime, and their steaks are so flavorful and surprisingly tender. Even someone like me, who does not know how to cook, can make it taste delicious. It's thanks to the quality of the beef. A lot of our listeners have been writing in, sharing similar feedback. Abigail Finan will not stop talking about Riverbend Ranch, and I feel the same. So these guys raise Angus cattle, but they've taken it even further. For 35 years now, more than 3 decades, the owner has selectively bred Angus cattle with superior genetics for marbling and tenderness. It's all about the marbling and the tenderness, creating a herd that truly stands out. Their beef is born, raised, and processed too entirely inside America without artificial growth hormones or antibiotics. And it is shipped directly from the ranch to your door. Riverbend Ranch is not just another beef company. It's a legacy of quality care and craftsmanship that you can taste in every bite. Order from riverbendranch.com. Use the promo code Megyn for $20 off your first order, and you'll be eating the same steak that my family and I eat at night. And let me know what you think. riverbendranch.com, promo code Megyn. The Trump administration announcing a major expansion this week in the fight to make America healthy again and end U.S. taxpayer subsidies of sugary drinks and junk food. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins on Monday granting USDA waivers to 6 states, banning soda, candy, and other junk foods from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, doubling the total number of participating states to 12. Florida, West Virginia, Colorado, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas approved in one fell swoop. Overhauling SNAP at the federal level would require passing legislation, an uphill battle against millions of dollars spent by an army of lobbyists to keep junk food eligible. The Trump administration is actively encouraging state governments to apply for waivers, allowing them to ban certain foods they deem unhealthy from SNAP. Each state follows its own process to define which foods should be excluded, then submits a formal waiver requesting USDA approval. Each new ban is set to take effect in 2026. HHS Secretary RFKJ and Commissioner of the FDA, Dr. Marty McCary, joining Secretary Rollins on Monday to promote the administration's MAHA agenda. Secretary Rollins speaking about the Trump administration's approach to cleaning up SNAP.
President Trump and our cabinet are doing things a little differently than the typical Washington, D.C. Since my confirmation, our department has encouraged states to think differently and creatively about how to solve the many health issues facing Americans. One way is by not allowing taxpayer-funded benefits to be used to purchase unhealthy items like soda, candy, and other junk food. The number one purchase by SNAP recipients is sugary drinks. SNAP is a supplemental nutrition program meant to provide health food benefits to low-income families to supplement their grocery budget so they can afford the nutritious food essential to health and well-being. That is the stated purpose of the SNAP program. The law states it, and President Trump's USDA plans to deliver on it.
Americans are suffering from a chronic disease epidemic. 6 in 10 Americans have at least one chronic disease. 4 in 10 have 2 or more. Dr. McCary says the cure to these diseases will come from tackling the root causes.
This begins the end of the government subsidization of our obesity, diabetes, insulin resistance epidemic. 40% of our nation's kids now have a diagnosed chronic disease. 31% have diabetes, prediabetes, or insulin resistance. We have to talk about nutrients and fiber, not just Ozempic and other medications to medicate our nation. And today, with this amazing moment, for the first time in American history, talking about taxpayer funding of our chronic disease epidemic in children, addressing the SNAP program to restore it to its mission, to talk about the N in SNAP, which is nutrition.
HHS Secretary RFKJ framing the SNAP waivers as one key in improving nationwide healthcare outcomes.
Up until this point, every USDA secretary has focused on food quantity. This is the first USDA secretary who is focused on food quality. We're spending $405 million a day on SNAP, and about 10% is going to sugary drinks. And between, if you add candies to that, it's about 13 to 17%. And we all believe in free choice. People can make their own choice about what they're going to buy and what they're not going to buy. If you want to buy a sugary soda, you ought to be able to do that. The U.S. taxpayer should not be paying to feed the poorest kids in our country with foods that are going to give them diabetes. And then my agency ends up through Medicaid and Medicare paying for those injuries. So we're going to put an end to that.
So far, the only blue state to gain a SNAP waiver is Colorado. Secretary Kennedy saying more Dem states are likely to apply, but there is one snag.
I met with a whole string of Democratic governors, including Governor Polis, and they all committed to filing SNAP waivers. And I don't want to call it MAHA because they think that's become kind of a partisan brand, and I don't care what they call it. They want to protect their children, and there's no such thing as Democratic children or Republican children. There are children, and we should all care about them.
The next push, a complete overhaul of the food pyramid. More from RFKJ.
I'm also working with Secretary Rollins on the dietary guidelines, which should come out next month, 3 months ahead of schedule. And the dietary guidelines that we inherited from the Biden administration were 453 pages long. They were driven by the same commercial impulses that put Fruit Loops at the top of the food pyramid. And they were incomprehensible. And we are going to release dietary guidelines that are 4, 5, or 6 pages long, that are understandable, that are simple, and will allow people to make good choices about their food. They will drive changes in the school lunch program, in prison lunches, in military food, and they will begin to change America almost immediately.
The Department of the Interior announcing on Wednesday the cancellation of what would have been one of the largest land-based wind farms in the U.S. The Lava Ridge Wind Project in southern Idaho, hastily approved under President Biden in December 2024, as so many wind projects were, on his way out the door. It called for construction of up to 231 wind turbines, each 600 feet tall, across more than 57,000 acres of federal land. This latest move following a day one executive order signed by President Trump, pausing the contract pending a comprehensive analysis. The Interior Department citing, quote, crucial legal deficiencies in the issuance of the approval, including unique statutory criteria that were ignored as grounds for cancellation. The specific criterion in question not yet clear. The project drawing intense outrage from the Idaho community since its initial proposal in 2020, with residents, ranchers, farmers, and tribal leaders accusing the Biden administration of ignoring local voices.
It's huge windmills taking over our public land. We're not going to give up. We're going to fight this thing until it's dead.
This decision being approved makes us angry. You put these turbines in the air, and they put them so far in the air, now it affects our patterns for our airplanes when we're trying to do crop dusting.
Then they're taking livelihoods away from some ranchers that have been generations of people there.
Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum releasing a statement, quote, by reversing the Biden administration's thoughtless approval of the Lava Ridge wind project, we are protecting tens of thousands of acres from harmful wind policy while shielding the interests of rural Idaho communities. This decisive action defends the American taxpayer, safeguards our land, and averts what would have been one of the largest, most irresponsible wind projects in the nation. President Trump has long been a critic of wind energy. We'll have more on this story next week in a special report on The Megyn Kelly Show. And that'll do it for your AM update. I'm Megyn Kelly. Join me back here for The Megyn Kelly Show live on SiriusXM Triumph Channel 111 at noon East, on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, and on all podcast platforms.